Let's imagine life right now with you having a done dissertation, walking across the graduation stage, getting that diploma, having your regalia on, and being done with this doctoral journey. Now, there is life after finishing this PhD, right? But what does that look like? And how do you prepare now for life after earning your PhD? Those questions will be answered on this episode of From ABD to PhD Show, where we talk about how to prepare for life after finishing your PhD. With that said, my name is Dr. Ramon Goings. I am the host of From ABD to PhD Show and founder of Done Dissertation. And our goal at Done Dissertation is to demystify the dissertation process so that you, the doctoral student, can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. If you are someone who is in need of support, I want you to hear from today's sponsors, who is the Done Dissertation Velocity Coaching Program. Our coaching program provides the infrastructure, the support, feedback on your work, and really the community that you need in order to finish your dissertation quickly. So if you're someone that needs help and you want to learn more about what we do at Done Dissertation in our Velocity Coaching Program, I would invite you to schedule a complimentary consultation by going to www.velocitydissertation.com, or you can scan the QR code that is here on your screen. With that said, I'm excited for today's episode because oftentimes we're talking about how to get through the dissertation process, how to set yourself up for success, how to navigate the people, the process, and the product of everything. But you all got to recognize that you all will be done one day, and we put this content out to help you get done. But then the question might become for you is like, what do I do with this thing after I'm done? And how do I prepare for life after the dissertation process now while I am actually still writing my dissertation? So this is why on today's episode, we want to talk about how to prepare for life after the PhD. So when we're thinking about life after the PhD, the first thing we need to consider is that, you have to have a plan and really have to determine what your goals are for maximizing your degree. As a doctoral student, there are so many ways that you can go about leveraging your doctorate. Some of you might want to consider consulting. Other folks might want to consider, going and, into academia. Some of you might want to consider doing a lot of things with your degree. But it's a matter of knowing what your goal is in order to maximize your opportunities. So, for instance, if you're someone right now writing your dissertation, but you know your goal is to engage in consulting work, what you want to start doing now as you are approaching finishing up your doctorate and start to position yourself as that consultant expert. Some ways that you can do this is to start writing op-eds, right? So maybe there's a particular issue that your dissertation is focused on, or you want to do your consulting in, and you start to write pieces on that. For instance, right now at Done Dissertation, I write a lot of op-eds on how to get through the dissertation process, but also I have a book upcoming around how to chair as a faculty member. So I write a lot. I've been writing a lot more pieces right now on strategies and insights for faculty on how to chair dissertations in order to, so that when the book comes out, it doesn't seem like, oh, this is coming out of nowhere. Like, no, we've been building this momentum for a long time now by putting out these thought pieces related to my area of expertise. So you want to start thinking about, doing that if you say consulting is your route. And then for what will be really important is to figure out, based on what you want to do, where are the people that in the eyeballs that will give you opportunities, and then you need to write and be in those spaces so that people know who you are and what you do. So if you're, for instance, if your area is focused on nonprofits, let's take this for example, then you might want to be connecting and being in the spaces like with Nonprofit Quarterly or like some other nonprofit entities to like provide your services, to provide your insights, your thought leadership in those spaces. So you have to be doing those things, and it's helpful to start doing it when as you're a doctoral student. And you might be wondering like, oh my God, I gotta write dissertation and do that. Like, look, if you're trying to be an expert and kind of shoot out of getting your doctorate by having these opportunities, these are some of the things that you have to do. Like, literally, this was the part of the process I did when I was a student. I started writing op-eds maybe like my last 2 years of my doc program, so I can start putting my research stuff out there on Black men student success as well as on HBCU success. And so that was part of the work that I did. And it took a while as I built that momentum. So by the time I finished my doctorate, I had already had a foundation. So I had opportunities to consult, opportunities to speak, a lot of different things that happened as a result. If consulting is your route, that might be what you want to, figure out and what your goal is. Just be mindful of whatever that is. Consulting, you might have a business that's already in place, so you want to grow it based on your research area. You might want to go into academia. So like if you're someone who's trying to make that transition to faculty, I know that life very well. I've been a faculty member for the last 9 years now, and I've been a tenure faculty member going on my fourth year. Or I'm sorry, 22, 23 on my third year as a tenure faculty member. You want to start thinking about, how to position yourself. So when you're a doctoral student, like, now's the time that especially if you have data from your dissertation, now's a great time to actually start working on publications from your dissertation. And, publication might be a route for you. Again, working on all of the documents because these positions just pop up randomly. So you just want to be prepared. So you might need to have your cover letter together, your CV, your research statement, teaching statement, depending on the state, your diversity, equity, inclusion statement. All these documents you're going to have together because if you're applying for a faculty position, they're going to want to see them. And then also the publications become helpful, and it's something you can prepare for now because when you're applying for faculty positions, a lot of times they want to see writing samples. And there's nothing better in a writing sample to give them something actually published versus it being maybe a dissertation chapter or something like that. So these are all the things that you want to start putting in place now to prepare for life after. But it all comes down to at its, foundation is to first determine what your goals are for maximizing the degree, and it looks different for everyone. So just figure out what your goals are, and you move things along from there. And if you have questions about this, feel free to drop them in the comments because I will gladly come back around and answer those questions. And then also I will use some of those questions for future content because I know there's a lot of questions you might have about doing certain aspects and how to leverage your degree. So I'd be happy to do that. So with that said, let's talk about the second aspect of like how to prepare for life after finishing your PhD. Is that not only do you need to know what your goals are to maximize the degree, but I want you to now to consider and evaluate your skill set to determine any gaps that you need to fill. This is important. It's something I'm always mindful of in terms of the gaps of my skill sets, and they're trying to figure out ways to plug and get opportunities to get PD around certain aspects of this. And so I'm going to give you two examples about how I've done this and how I've addressed these kind of skill set deficiencies, if you will. So when I was a doctoral student, I took all my research classes and I took methods classes, but I didn't get enough quantitative classes in my doc program because of the track I was on. And so because of that, when I became about my second and third year as a faculty member, the research questions that I wanted to ask in my scholarship started to shift. I had done initially more qualitative research, but a lot of the questions I was starting to ask require a quantitative skill set in terms of data analysis, as well as just thinking through and designing quantitative studies. And so with that, what I ended up doing was going after some funding, and I got a grant from the National Science Foundation. And it was a 2-year grant. And in part of this grant program through NSF, what I did is it allowed me to conduct a research project, but then part of the funds could be used for professional development. So what I would do, because I wanted to advance my quantitative skill set as well as mixed methodology skill set, is that I actually went back to school. So I was a professor, fourth year professor, back in stats classes with first, second, third year doc students. So I went back to school. I took more stats classes. Also took classes in psychometrics. And then I did a lot of professional development around going to mixed methodology conferences. So I can be immersed in that environment to learn some of the skill set, learn how mixed methodologists kind of talk about their work and how they engage in research and think through the designing of their studies. Like all that stuff became really important. So that was a skill deficiency I had, and I found a way to solve it. And sometimes there's funding available for you to solve some of these gaps as well. So, it's an opportunity to kind of double dip. Like you're making, you're able to generate, grant funds or whatever that helps as a faculty member or, possibly in another position, but then you also get the PD support. So it's like the best of both worlds. Another way I've done that is in the business. So when we first started done dissertation, my background is not necessarily in business per se, in internet and content marketing. So I had to get some support on that. So I invested, tens of thousands of dollars into my own professional development around marketing. Something from, simple as how to, design and, launch a group coaching program to when I was wanting to learn how to run Facebook ads. I took a course on how to run Facebook ads. Like all these things were really important because there was a skill set that I lacked, and I wanted to then get a remedy to that so I can get the skills I needed to solve that particular problem. So if you're a doctoral student looking to try to figure out how do I leverage the degree, or you already have your doctorate, take an assessment of where are your skill sets currently and what gaps you need to fill. Another gap in particular that some of you all might have at this point at time might also be around publications, because we know a lot of folks get through their doctoral program, sometimes not having access to opportunities to write for publications. So that might be a skill set. So, gap that you might have. So there are supports. We have that support for our Dissertation clients around writing for publication, but there are a number of places where you can get that kind of support. So if you're someone in that boat, you might want to reach out to get more help around those areas. Again, we want to close the skill gap so that you can leverage this degree in the best way that you want to maximize whatever goal you've set out for yourself. So this is really important. And before we get into the next point around how to prepare for life after the PhD, if you could do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button and notification bell here on, if you're watching this on YouTube, but if you're following us on LinkedIn or Facebook or somewhere else, make sure you hit the follow button, because we found that over 90% of people who watch our content are not actually following or subscribed to us. So we want you all to know when we have new content coming out. So please, if you do us a favor, make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button, depending on the platform. And on YouTube in particular, we are striving to go, at the time of this recording, go for 1,000 subscribers. We're currently around 775. So we got about 225 left now. So let's, we need y'all's help to help us get and meet that goal. And so if you can do so, that would mean the world to us by hitting subscribe. And with that said, I want to go into one other point to consider when you're trying to prepare for life after the PhD, and it's this. I want you to recognize that your path may be very different than others. Again, I wanted to say that again. Your path might be very different than others. And if your path is very different than others, it can be a little scary, because somehow, some way, sometimes, and particularly with folks with doctors, there's sometimes this groupthink that happens. And what it can feel like is that you might be pushed, by a chair or advisor to, oh, after I finish my doctorate, I gotta go and get a faculty position, or I have to do and work in a lab, or I have to go get a postdoc. You don't have to do anything. What I want you to be mindful of, that your path is your path to explore alone. The reason why I say that is because you don't want to get, it's good to get thoughts from other people, but we want you to do what you want to do. Like for me, for instance, I love being a faculty member, but I love entrepreneurship as well. So I had to find a way where I can blend the two worlds, because that was what I love to do. Not everybody who's a faculty member wants to do entrepreneurial endeavors. A lot of faculty members think like, oh God, I don't have time for all that. I have so much in the day with my research, but for me, I love to do research, and I do that a lot. You go take a look at my CV. I write a lot. I love to do that, but I love what we do at the Dissertation as well. And those allow me, to really be in my zone of genius. So you really want to be mindful and find whatever zone of genius it is for you, and stick to it, and just have blinders on. Just like what you need to do with your dissertation is like to block out all the noise. You're going to have to do this as you're setting your own path for exploring life after finishing your doctorate. Because again, there's so many ways to go, and people have so many well-intentioned ideas for you. But I always would ask you, what do you want to do? And based on what you want to do, create a plan, create an infrastructure to make those goals, happen and come to fruition. That's so important. Like the Dissertation wouldn't be here if I listened to the advice of other folks. Just to give an example, and I wrote a piece about this one time in a issue. And I might pull it up here as I'm chatting with you all, so you all can see what I'm talking about, and how I take things that happen and turn it into perspectives that I can share to, again, thought partnership and thought leadership, to put my ideas out there. But then also just the reality of what happens in for me, particularly in higher education, sometimes when I'm trying to put my work out there. And so just to give you an example, and I'm typing as I'm talking, is that there was one instance where I probably was in like my second or third year as a faculty member. And again, I'm going to pull this up and share my screen with you all so you can see what I'm looking at. And there was an incident that I had. I was presenting at a conference, and I was asked to talk about how to, write blog posts and such as a researcher and engage with social media. And as part of this experience, I had someone who had reached out in the audience, and they were in the back of the room. They were a faculty member. Like, look, I'm a tenure faculty member, and this advice you're telling folks to do, and just, I guess, a caveat, my advice to the audience was, hey, if you're going to write for publication, do what you need to do, because the peer review stuff matters, right? It is the currency in higher ed. However, take those ideas from those pieces you're writing for peer review, and then distill them so that you can write it in a venue that's more wide reaching to a larger audience based on the topic that you're talking about. And you can do that via blogs and other forms of content. And the faculty member in the back of the room raised his hand and said, you know what, you're telling these people the wrong thing. You should never do that. They need to stick with peer review publications. That's cool. I'm telling them it wasn't like a one or the other approach. It was a both and that was the experience I had. But I had to be firm in my grounding because I knew what I was doing was working. I was writing those publications. Like my first couple years of faculty member, I had about 30 publications. Like I knew that lane very well, but I knew that if I wanted to reach a wider audience, I needed to write outside those journal articles. And so these are some of the things that you have to contemplate. But literally, that experience with that particular at that particular conference became a piece that I actually ended up, publishing and talking about. And so I'm just gonna pull this up so you all can see in this particular publication. Let me make it full screen so we got this here. And so what I ended up doing is that I ended up writing a piece for diverse issues in higher education. And I talked about how I was at the conference and I talked about the whole experience I just described for you. But this turned into an opportunity for me to talk about how, in this case, I talk about here, how, after writing for peer review outlets, I typically share it on Twitter and Facebook. And then I talk about experience that I had, like from doing this type of work of sharing my work outside of, the typical means. I actually gotten opportunities to consult and all these things because of the work that I'm doing via social media. This is really important and something that I don't want you all to take for granted. There are a lot of opportunities available to you if you are willing to engage slightly different than what people have done previously. But it takes a little bit of not being scared of people saying, what you're doing is wrong and those types of things in order to get to that point. But for me, again, I had a tunnel vision. That was the thing I wanted to do. And literally, I write for these types of venues all the time. I had a series with another publisher called Interfolio. And actually, Interfolio, they do, if you're in academia, they do all the hiring searches for a lot of universities. They're like the document portal where you submit your work to. And I happened to be speaking on a panel one time at a conference, and then someone from their content and marketing team was in the audience. They were like, "Oh, I really like your perspective. Would you ever be interested in writing for us on some of these issues?" I'd be like, "Sure, why not?" And I wrote for them about 2 years of various, content pieces, and I got paid to do that as a paid contributing writer. So like these are so many opportunities that are available because I was willing to put myself out there and, really go into the journey that was meant for me. And so I really want you to consider that, because a lot of times you'll be running into folks who all they want you to do is the work that they want you to do, and selfishly is for their own good. And so just to summarize what we talked about in today's episode of how to prepare for life after the PhD, is that first things first, you're going to want to determine what your goals are for maximizing the degree. Again, determine what those goals are and create a plan and put that plan into place. Second is that you're going to have to evaluate any skill gaps, skill deficiencies to fill the gap, because a lot of us just aren't able to learn everything in our doc program. So just be mindful of that. And then third, you have to recognize that your path may be very different than others, and being willing to stick in that, because I promise you, the people who win have stuck to their unique path that was made for them. And I hope that this was really helpful. And if you're still someone you're a doctoral student watching this and you're like, shoot, I want this life after, but I don't know how to get there because I'm still stuck trying to get my dissertation done, we would invite you to work with us in our Velocity coaching program, because we know we have the support structure, we have the scholarly community, we have all the resources that you would need to write and defend your dissertation quickly. So if you want to do that, I'd invite you to apply to us and have a complimentary consultation. You can learn more about us at www.velocitydissertation.com or scan the QR code that is here on your screen. And one of the benefits and what separates us for a lot of companies out there is that we actually do a lot of professional development with our clients. So we actually do a lot of that to prepare you for life after, because I just know it's so important, and that setting yourself up now as a student for the success as doctor is really key. But a lot of times, a lot of our doctoral programs, just because of resources and of ability in terms of faculty, what we have the capacity to do, sometimes can fall short in this particular area if you're going outside of traditional, like going to higher ed faculty position or something like that. And so we have that support for you at Done Dissertation through our PD as well, to really give you the whole complete system to finish your doctorate and then prepare for life after, so that you can leverage your doctorate in any way that you would like. So if that is you, make sure that you scan the QR code that is here on your screen. And if you're watching this and you're someone who has a doctorate and you might have some skill sets that you want to close the gap on, and if we can help support you, please do reach out to us on our social media so we can hear more about what you need and we can provide some support for you, because we have some great programming that's getting ready to roll out for my entrepreneurs who have their doctorate, as well as for folks who need support around their publications. And so with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode of From ABD to PhD Show. If you could just do me a huge favor, hit the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, and a notification bell if you're watching this on LinkedIn, Facebook, or somewhere else. Make sure you hit that follow button so that you can get more content from us in the future. And with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching today's episode. I look forward to see you next time. And until then, cheers.